Hello, I'm Len Lindsay. I'm going to give you an overview of the Handwritten Bible project from Madison, Wisconsin. Up until 555 years before that project started, all the Bibles were handwritten. Then Gutenberg came out with the printing press. His first big project was a beautiful, gorgeous, 2-volume handwritten Bible. And from that point on, Bibles were printed rather than handwritten. Now, 555 years later, on August 26th of 2010, it seemed like God was asking me to collect all the chapters of the Bible handwritten in the Madison area. Within a couple days, I had created a website to coordinate this, and I created a grid sheet for people to write. We know that people don't write straight usually, so they needed a way to write straight. So I created a grid sheet where they could put the chapter of the name of the book of the Bible. So this would be chapter 3 of Genesis, what translation they were using. They could use whichever one they wanted. They could write all the way across as one column, but I had lines here for people who like having 2 columns. They could do 2 columns. There'd be a guide. At the bottom, they were going to write Handwritten Bible Madison, and they're going to put the date and their first name or their initials in the bottom corner. But they weren't going to write on this, they were going to write on this side. And you can see how that's not helpful until you put a piece of white paper under it. Now you can see the lines, so everyone will be able to write straight. And more than writing straight, it will look orderly, that everybody's pages will always have things in the same places. You'll flip through the Bible, the handwriting will change, but the way it looks will remain the same. Okay. Then when they finished it, they would turn their sheets into me, and I would collect them. So I would have a collection of people's handwritten pages, and you could see the writing, and you can see that on the back is this. What I did is I photocopied them so that this would be the same thing, but photocopied so that it's blank on the other side. And this would be the way I would proofread it, because we wanted the handwriting to be readable, but didn't have to be gorgeous, but it had to be accurate. The Bible needed to be accurate, and they were supposed to copy word for word from whatever translation they chose. Someone would proofread it to make sure that it was accurate. Corrections would be made on the copy. The original would always stay the way that it was turned in. Okay. When the project started, I tried to guess how many pages it was going to be. I thought it would be maybe 3,000 pages. And if you think that's a high estimate, when it was completed, it was actually 3,835 pages. So it was even higher. That's too many pages for one volume. It'd be too thick. So I divided up into 6 volumes the Bible. So when the Bible was done, there would be 6 volumes making one Bible. And the way I divided it is the way most people online were talking about the Bible. They would talk about the first 5 books of the Bible as the Pentateuch. Those are what Moses wrote. The next 12 books were the historical books. Then the next 5 books were called Poetry and Wisdom, which included Psalms and Proverbs. Then after that were the prophets. Then came the New Testament with the Gospels, and the rest of the New Testament I called the letters, which mostly were letters, as well as Acts and Revelation. When we did this handwritten Bible, there's just one copy. So what you're going to see now is the only copy of the handwritten Bible. I decided when the project was going on that we should do first books of the Bible that people might be the most familiar with. So I thought Psalms and Proverbs would be a good place to start. And that's where we started on August 26th of 2010. It took us 3 months, a little bit less than 3 months. So on November 20th of 2010, we had finished that volume. And how do you know if you're hearing God correctly when I say that God asked me to do this? Different ways. What I did when we were all done with it, I thought I should have an introduction page at the very front of the Bible, and I should put a little picture on the top. And A bigger version of this on canvas was hanging on my wall at my office where I worked. And I thought, wow, that would be perfect for the introduction page of a handwritten Bible, because this is a painting of hands. They're handprints. They're done by a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old who just happened to be my grandkids, Salvador and Veronica. In any case, I took the canvas that they did the handprints on to Staples and asked them to scan it and so that it'd be the right size to fit on the top half of a page. When they flipped over the canvas to put it on their scanner, on the back side of the canvas there was a date. That is the same exact date that 3 months before that I started this project. So I thought that was an interesting way to show that perhaps I was on the right track. Okay, next. I'll give you a story from each volume as I go. The first volume is Poetry and Wisdom. I had these bins I bought at Staples. When I'm carrying them around, that they were protected. When there's only one copy, you want to make sure that it's kept in good shape. Now the story for this volume, so this is the case, and this is the volume. I tried to have them match up, so if I line these up, it looks like a Bible. It's gold, and the Bibles that we did are gold too, because God told me He wanted this to be beautiful like a wedding present. So I thought leather bound with the little ridges, gold embossing, gilded pages, ribbons would be what would be the best way to do it. So, and if you're going to do a wedding present, you should have some art in it. A lot of the old Bibles had interleaved inside the Bible these gorgeous works of art. And I thought maybe the first page of each book of the Bible could be the title page. And so, for example, Psalms. Now, when the lady who did this, her name is Christy, asked me, can I use a photo? I said, well, yeah, you could use a photo, but it has to have the name of the book on it. So I thought that people would be doing line drawings, paintings, and now I thought, okay, they could do photos, and they'll be photoshopping names of the Bible into there. What she did is she went to Door County on a beach. This does not look like a beach that you're going to go swimming in, but she wrote the word Psalms in the sand, went up on the cliff, and took a picture, and that became her work of art. As people looked through these handwritten Bibles, I noticed one of the things that they always wanted to see was the art. So I went to Staples and had them make, it's called mountain laminate on this foam core, and each one is going to be, it's very lightweight, so that they're also available. I brought artwork to show people where I went with it too. So this one is the first volume, Poetry and Wisdom. The second volume I did that also would be familiar to people is the Gospels. So people generally know the Psalms and the Proverbs and the Gospels. So once again, what I was doing, if you noticed, I'm changing the colors. This one I did red for the blood of Christ. First one I did green because I was thinking creation, green grass. No, that's going to be the brown one. I can't remember why I chose green. Anyway, the story with the Gospels is actually in the binding itself. Grimm Book Bindery is a Madison company that will actually bind one copy of a book for you. I used their services before, so I already knew them. And the people there are fantastic. They do absolutely, you can tell, absolutely wonderful jobs with what they do. But every once in a while, there's a mistake. And at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you about one of my big mistakes. But the interesting story here was when I was doing, I'll use the cases. When I was doing this, I wanted Grimm Book Bindery to be sure when they made the second one that the lines matched up. and that it was the same font and the same size and everything matched. So I told them what words to put on it right here, and I gave them a copy of the Bible that they were going to match it with. And what they did, they matched it so perfectly that it didn't say the Gospels here. It said Poetry and Wisdom. So this volume originally said Poetry and Wisdom, which is incorrect. So I had to go back to Grimm Book Bindery and say, can you like rub that out or something and put Gospels? And they said no, they had to redo it. So this is the only volume of the Handwritten Bible that was bound twice. First, it was bound as the Poetry and Wisdom. Second, it was unbound and rebound again as the Gospels, which is what it really is. Okay. And that, if we're keeping track, the second volume, we completed that on June 17th of 2011. It took about 7 months from the first one. The first one took 3 months. The second one took 7 more months. Okay, then the third volume. I decided we should do the rest of the New Testament. A lot of people know the books in the Bible of the New Testament. I choose white for the color, since it's the end. So this one's going to be a nice white volume. Okay, so what's the story going to be for this one? Story for this one. Oh, this one, when we completed writing these Bibles, we would take them someplace and read the entire volume out loud. We'd have a group of maybe half dozen to a dozen of us sitting around a table, and we would read them out loud. So this one was completed right before my birthday. So I decided we could have like a double celebration. We could celebrate the volume being done. That was the third one out of 6. It was half completed project, and it would be my birthday celebration. So we went to do that. We went to the Sunprint Cafe on the square. I chose that place because weekdays during the morning we would read the Bible, just regular Bibles, around a table, going through the Bible. I think we went through the Bible like 6 times out loud around the table. And so we started there in the morning and afternoon of December 1st, which was a Saturday. And we stopped then and we said, let's go someplace else. And then we went to Memorial Union, University of Wisconsin Memorial Union. And even if we read till evening, we were only halfway done. It was almost Christmas time because this was December 1st. So we never finished reading the entire thing out loud until January 5th, where we went back to the Memorial Union again. And we finished it. So the story there is how we used to read them out loud after we finished them. The fourth volume, another one that a lot of people are familiar with. This is nice. I'm assuming people are familiar with so much of this. Is the first 5 books of the Bible, which people refer to as the Pentateuch. And I'm going to talk about one of the title pages for the Pentateuch. The title page I'm going to talk about is for the book of Leviticus. The first 5 books I did in brown. That was what I was thinking of. A creation was creating things, I had it be brown. Okay. This way. So, the story with the artist, a lot of times I would ask them, how did you come up with your art? And what's interesting is this one was done by a nurse who just happens to be from, you can tell, a fantastic artist as well. And she told me, she gave me a written explanation of what she had done with her artwork. She said the key to the book was holiness of God. Observe the word in this colored pencil. So she did it in a colored pencil, holiness, here. And she said it begins as H, which is pure white up above the heavens, here. And it represents God, and it gradually turns from yellow to orange into red at the bottom, which was a symbol for the blood sacrifice. And she put blood there to show that. The word holiness is dividing the Old Testament of animal sacrifice with the chief priest Aaron. To the New Testament, the chief priest is Christ and his sacrifice, and the holy hand of God is on him here. The background temples are side by side. There's temples side by side. And the temple of the old on one side, the Christ, the atonement for forgiveness of sins on the other side. And at the very bottom, she had set a table. She said in Leviticus, it talks about feasts. The table is set. The setting is for the 12. In the Old Testament would be the 12 tribes, and the New Testament, the 12 disciples. And so when people do their artwork, they took this seriously. The artwork was created specifically for the Handwritten Bible, and they concentrated on what they wanted to portray in their art. The art is a visual depiction of what the words were, and this is an excellent example of that. Okay. So now we are 4 volumes out of 6 done. Next volume has an interesting story about the Capitol. Envelopes. You're going to find out about the envelopes. Oh, and these are heavy. When this is done, I had to have a wheeled cart to carry the Bible. Okay, this one is the historical books, which means the books right after Genesis and the first 5 books of the Bible were the historical books. Now, what's interesting about how this came about is I like doing what God asked me to do. And it seemed like God was telling me he wanted me to go into the state capitol, which terrified me, to every single senator's office and representative's office with one of the Bibles. I would think I carried mostly the Gospels with me, and ask if anyone in the office wanted to write a chapter for the next volume that we're working on. I thought a good book of the Bible for people in the capital to write would be 1 Kings. I thought 1 Kings is perfect for governments downtown. And yes, they actually did write chapters. 19 people in the offices actually wrote chapters, about equal numbers on Democrats and Republicans. But my story is, when I walked around, these are kind of a mess, but I put inside an envelope, I put a folder, and the folder had how to contact me with a card. I gave them the white paper to put in the back to make it easier to do. I gave them examples. I gave them an explanation of what the project was, and I gave them 10 grid sheets. Typically, they only were going to need 3 or 4, but in case they made mistakes, they had extra. I think by the time the project was done, I probably printed 7,000 or 8,000 of these grid sheets. Okay, so they got all this in a pack, and what I did to make it easy for me, if they said, yes, I will write a chapter, I didn't want to have to start looking up things. So in the corner, I would already have the name of the book of the Bible and what chapter they're supposed to write, and I put in the corner how many pages I thought it would take. I also would put a piece of paper here where they fill out their name, their phone number, and email address, so I know who's doing what. I needed to be able to come back and collect it when they were done, and I needed to update my records so I didn't have 2 people writing the same chapter. So that's how the envelopes went around. Now, there's one gentleman said, oh, I'll write a chapter. And I said, yay. And I was going to give him an envelope, and he said, no, he wanted to pick his own chapter. And I said, that's fine. You can do any chapter you want as long as no one's already doing it. So I gave him the website. He would go to handwrittenbible.com, and on the homepage, if you see a chapter in green, that means it's available to you. If it's in red, I color-coded it. If it's in red, it's done. And if it's in yellow, someone said they're doing it, and I still haven't received it from them. So pick one that's green, and then just email me. Okay, so a few weeks later, I'm going around collecting chapters. I did not hear back from him, which is okay. And this is what someone gave me. And they said, "Is that okay?" And I said, "It's in Hebrew." Oh, it's upside down. See, I can't do Hebrew. There's 13. This is 1 Kings chapter 13, which it says right here. I don't know Hebrew. So I said, yeah, I can use that, but I'm going to need someone to write it in English. And they said that was fine. So as I'm walking out of their office with this paper they gave me, I'm thinking, hey, maybe I go ask that guy who said he didn't want to just have just any old chapter, he wanted to pick one. Maybe he would think it's special enough he could do the English for this chapter. So I start walking down to his office. And first of all, we start talking about what's the odds of this happening. So what's the odds of someone giving me their chapter written in Hebrew? They knew I wanted it in English, so they gave it to me in Hebrew. What's the odds that as I'm walking towards his office, I meet him in the hallway? And I recognized him. And I've got this paper, and I say, I know you said you would like to write a chapter for the Handwritten Bible, but you wanted to pick one. I just got this from another office, and I need someone to write, this is in Hebrew. I need someone to write it in English. Would you want to write this chapter in English? And he takes it from me. This is so interesting. And he says, follow me. I say like, whoa. So off we go down the hallway. We end up in this photocopy room, and he puts it down in the photocopier, makes some copies, grabs this. I get to keep the original. He grabs the copies. Walk over. He walks into his office. He sits down at his desk. He reaches above his desk where you have like a bookshelf, and he pulls down a Hebrew Bible. And I was like, oh, remember, this is inside the state capitol. He's got a Hebrew Bible. And so he opened it up to 1 Kings 13, and I was watching it. Looked the same. He proofread it for me because he knew Hebrew. And he said, whoever wrote this did a really good job. Ends up, the lady who wrote this, father is a rabbi, so she probably had practice. But he said she did a good job. It was just good. And he said he'd write the English for it. So he wrote the English. Interesting, the end of that story, he did his English with a beta version of the Net Bible, the second beta version. There were actually 2 beta versions for the Net Bible. He had a beta version before it was even put out. And then, of course, I needed to get a beta version so I could see if he did it accurately, because I had to proofread it. So I now have a beta version of the Net Bible too. Okay, so let's put this book out. Okay. Oh, let's see. Let's see what it looked like inside. Since we're here, 1 Kings 13, 1 Kings 12. There's the Hebrew, and then when you turn the page, that's his verse, his English version, and not first. He didn't put beta there, but the net translation. Okay, what are we on? Are we on the last one now? Okay, the 6th volume is the Prophets. This one I'm going to tell you a story about my big mistake. It's nice to know that this Handwritten Bible was done by real people. You wouldn't believe how many mistakes we fixed when we were proofreading it. Whole sentences would be left off. Words would be misspelled, like altar. There's altering something, and then there's the altar. But this sentences, you think, how could anyone miss a sentence? Well, when you're copying back and forth like this, a lot of times this is the same word in that paragraph, and your eyes went away from this word, and you look back and you found the second occurrence of that word, and you just kept writing from there. And I did that too. I'm not going to show you that because I don't know where my example is of that. But I'm going to show you my big mistake. It's nice when the person in charge of the project makes a really big mistake and they can't fix it. The reason I could not fix it is because it's bound into the Bible. So here we go. You're going to see the big mistake. I'll let you decide. If you can get a little bit of close view, you can see if you can actually see the mistake. My mistake was at the very end of the book. Since this was the final, I thought I'll put all the artwork inside the cover of the back. So here are all the books of the Bible. A visual picture of the entire Bible right there. The problem is when it switches from the Old Testament to the New Testament. I didn't even notice this until the person who did the artwork that's missing told me, where's Malachi? He did Malachi. I have Zechariah as the last book of the Old Testament. Not true. After Zechariah comes Malachi, then comes Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So I now have a permanently engraved mistake of people saying, how could you miss an entire book of the Bible? I thought it was bad, people missing sentences. I missed the entire book. Okay, so that's the final story of this volume. Now, the one thing I want to talk about, when it was all done, we were going to have we had a couple parties. We celebrated. You like celebrating things when it's done, especially when they're big projects. And I lost my paper, but that's okay. So Pinney Library was a place where when we were writing chapters, we would have writing parties. I called them the quietest party in Madison. People would come to the writing party. I would give them some of those blank pages.